Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Mark Wallace Live Portfolio Reviews, and joining me today is Alexis Catherine, and she is a model. If you haven't seen her on a lot of the Adorama videos that we've been doing, or on, you're all over my Facebook page, and we just made a little announcement, we're traveling around the world, so a lot of you probably know who she is, but Alexis is joining us today, and she is going to be reading all of the stuff that's coming through on the chat window. So if you're not in the chat room, make sure you join on Mark Wallace Live, or snapfactory.com/live. There's a little button up there that you can push, and it opens up the chat window, and so you can chat with us live and ask your questions, and we will be doing that. And so welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I just call her Lex, so don't get confused by that. Well, we're excited because this show is brought to you today by the kind sponsorship of Squarespace. And Squarespace is the place that you can get all of your website hosting needs met. In fact, we have a little video that we want to show you right now from Squarespace. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code SNAPFactory1. All right, so we are back. We are doing two things today. We're going to be doing the portfolio reviews as well as pictures, right? It's the entire wrapper that holds your photos. So it's your sales pitch, it's all the services that you offer, it's the quality of your work, and it's information about you. It's your location and contact information and your availability and your client list. And again, it has to be tailored to your audience. So when we're looking at your portfolio specifically, what I'll be looking at is how is the package that surrounds your photos, not necessarily the photos themselves. We'll obviously look at those, but we're looking at those things. And then what I'm looking for specifically is a myopic portfolio. In other words, it needs to be very, very focused. And so it's like, what's the better word for myopic? Focused is what I'm looking for. And so if you're let's say you have somebody, and this happens all the time, person that's a glamour photographer, and they have all these pictures of gorgeous girls in bikinis. A lot of times I'll see those portfolios, and then on that portfolio page, then there's like children's photos. To me, it doesn't make any sense at all. And so, you should either be a children's photographer or a glamour photographer, or if you're a wedding photographer, it should be about weddings, and you shouldn't mix in like architecture and things like that. So it should be a focused portfolio. And then also, it needs to be purpose-driven. And what I mean by that is you need to have a portfolio that drives either sales of your online photos or drives people to call you to book a photo shoot or book a wedding, those kinds of things. And they can't do that unless they have contact information. And so when we're looking at your portfolio, we're going to be looking to see, is your phone number on there? Is there a way for us to contact you that's not through a form on your page, because we don't like that. And then also we need to make sure that you have photos that support your calls to action. So if you are a wedding photographer and you want people to call you and book weddings, then you should have wedding pictures, which seems obvious, but you would be surprised at how many people have portfolios from like, I'm a wedding photographer, and all there are cars and senior portraits and things like that. So make sure that your photos support your calls to action. And then also you want to have quality work, so your photos should be quality. And then also we want to make sure that you have thumbnails on your screen, and you want to have clearly defined navigation so people don't get lost in your website. That's always a bummer, they'll leave. And then the silent treatment. And what I mean by that is, in my opinion, it's very rare when you go to a website to have groovy music playing in the background. That drives me nuts. The first thing I want to do is turn that off. Yeah, it's crazy. It's not my space, so stop doing that. Now, some photographers, again, this goes back to local community. So a lot of, I don't want to say small town people like that better, but so that sounds like I'm such a jerk, right? I'm a jerk. But there are some communities and some demographics where little music in the background works. So again, my opinion is for what it's worth. I'm such a jerk. Okay, here we go. We're going to get started and look at all the stuff. Now, to be fair, we had about 130, 140 submissions on Facebook for this portfolio and image review today. And if we did that over the hour, we'd have to do, I think, something like one image per 40 seconds. I think the math works out to something like that. I'm pretty bad at math. So we can't get to everybody's. So what we wanted to do was find a representative grouping of photos that would help us understand how to be better photographers, and a representative group of portfolios so we could help people learn how to present their work better. And so that's how we decided. And so without further ado, we're going to dive right in. Was that enough? Are there questions already coming in?
Not yet.
Not yet. So don't forget, if you have questions, zip over to snapfactory.com/live, and there is a little chat window, and we are looking at this live, and so you can, there it is. Hello, Mark, how are you doing? Fine, see, it's live. So we're going to do that. All right, so this image right here is from, I hope I'm saying this right, Vidya Chris. This was shot in Abu Dhabi, and I think it's Empire of the Desert, one of her favorite photographs. Now, I really like this. I like several things about this photo. I like that it has some action. I like this bird here coming down. It looks like he's about, I'm going to land on the camel. I like it because it's a place I've never been that looks, have you been to Abu Dhabi?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Maybe we'll add that.
Maybe we should.
We should do that. So I like that. I like that there's somebody coming and going, and it follows the rule of thirds somewhat, but for an image like this, it doesn't have to exactly. The things that I think could be improved, though. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on this photo before
I love it. I think it's beautiful.
All right, enough said. Then we're done.
I do.
Yeah, I like it. I think there are a few things from a technical perspective that should be improved. And so specifically the details in the highlights and in the blacks. And so if you look in this, you can see that the background is blown out, and the highlights on the sand and in the camels, those highlights are too bright, so we're losing detail there. So we could gain a lot of information and detail in the shadow area. You can see on the highlight areas of the sand here, it's just washed out. There's no detail there at all. So we could get a little bit more feel of the texture of that, as well as the fur on the camels here, because we can't really see distinguishing marks on the face of the camel or on this side because the highlights are blown out. So in Lightroom or in Photoshop, if you shot this in RAW, just take the highlight slider and bring that down a little bit, and you're gonna regain some detail in that those highlight areas. And then the opposite is true of the blacks. And so the shadow detail is nice, but in the blacks, especially in like the hair right here and right up here in the detail on the coats and stuff that are on the camels, we have the opposite effect where we don't have any detail there. And so what we're getting is we're losing contrast in the image. So the image could be punchier with more detail, and we could see more of it if you brought those highlights down and brought the shadows and opened them up a little bit so we could see more of those details. And then we would have more contrast instead of this almost grayscale image where there isn't a black exactly and a white exactly. It's just too much of the middle tones being muddled together. So technically, some improvements, but I think we both agree, awesome photo,
Absolutely,
right?
Great shot.
Yeah, so good job. All right, moving on. And I love having this kind of banter, right? Where you're like, I love it. And I'm like, it's great, except for technically it's got all these problems. It can be so much better. All right, so this shot here, and we're gonna move at a very quick pace today. This is Tom's shot, how would you say that? Sigurdigen?
Ooh,
something.
I'm gonna let you handle that.
Yeah, Tom S. And this was shot with the Sony with the Sigma lens, and I played with the Sigma lens. It's pretty sharp, and I like this shot. So this is a classic low-key image. I like how this was lit, side light. And one of the keys, again, I'm curious what your perspective is on this, because I just like when I dive in on all the technical stuff.
To me, he looks a little bit sinister. The half-lit face gives him a little bit of that sinister look, which I like.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be sinister.
Yes.
I think well done on that. And one of the things I think is really well done with this is what we were talking about in the image previous, and that's why I put these together, is the blacks on this are absolutely black, which is what you want with a low-key image. Low-key is a term for very shadowy images where you have mostly a dark area with some light lighting this like this. And so really, really high contrast where the difference in the brights and the darks really stand out. That's high, low-key photography. Not to be confused with the term called chiaroscuro, which is a painting term, or we won't get into that, but Google it, chiaroscuro, it's really cool. But the other thing I like about this, and it's a tiny, tiny detail, but you see right here on the eyeball, there's that little teeny dot. That's called a catch light. And what that does is this guy is sinister, but if that catch light were to go away, then his eye would look completely dead, which would, instead of just being sinister, he would look like he was from in the morgue. And so the key to a shot like this is to have really nice side light which we have, but not so far back around to the back of this person's head that we lose that catch light in the eye. So well done there. And I also think the sharpening is done appropriately. So we can see the details in the mustache and in the beard there, and all the pores in the skin. And so it's been sharpened appropriately for the web. So I think the post-processing is done pretty well. The other thing that I would suggest, maybe, and I don't know, this is just a maybe kind of thing. Play with it. You may have already done this. But if you had a kicker light from the opposite side, what we would gain is, instead of having this sort of a weird shaped head, you would have just a tiny bit of highlight, and so you could see the outline of the other side of his face. I don't know if that would work or not for this image.
I kind of like it like this.
Yeah, I know this works.
Yeah.
But I would also do, I would try that, and then you have the choice between something where you see a little bit more of the entire face and still low key, or this sinister kind of, I'm the one who knocks kind of face. It's pretty crazy. All right. Don't forget, if you have comments or suggestions, please, in the chat room, because the chat room right now are asking about
lens kits.
Oh, the lens kits. All right, I'll let you sort through that and see. Like words. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Words and words. Yeah. So don't forget, ask questions, because we are looking at that. All right, moving right along. We have this shot here, and this was from Kristin, and I think this was from a photo contest. It was like a faces photo contest. I think this is a beautiful shot.
I do too.
And I am not a baby photographer fan guy person. But this shot is, I think, spectacular. And there are several reasons for that. One, I think it was the shallow depth of field is terrific. And so if you don't know what that is when you can choose how much of an image is in focus and how much is falling out of focus. And so we could see that the eyeballs are crystal clear. They're in focus, and that's what you want. So if you have shallow depth of field like this, the thing that's really important is, as long as the eyes are sharp, pretty much anything else can fall out of focus and you're okay. But if you have, let's say, maybe the nose or the lips are sharp and the eyes are slightly out of focus, that's no good. So the eyes have to be sharp, and you can see when we zoom in here, these eyes are crystal clear. The other thing I like about this shot, it's an adorable child. I don't know, all kids are adorable, right?
Right.
Yeah, not the screaming ones on planes. Those are not adorable. Or kids at restaurants who scream. Not adorable. Let's get rid of those, all those. They can go away. But this one, I'm sure, doesn't do any of that. The other thing I really like about this shot is the catch light in the eye. And so we have, I don't know what this is, but it looks like a big window here. And the light is really, really soft, so it's shadowless. The light has great fall off.
We got a couple questions coming in. A lot of comments about the clarity of the eyes, really amazing. And then Jeffrey Dowell says, what's your opinion on using a crop sensor for portraits?
So sometimes a crop sensor can be beneficial to portraits. I personally I always use a full-size sensor for several reasons. But let's talk about why a cropped sensor could be good for portraits. If you can't afford or don't have a real long lens to work with, sometimes a crop sensor can let you get away with a little bit shorter lens. You're still going to have distortion, because a wide angle lens is always going to give you distortion because you have to get in closer. But when you have a cropped lens, you can actually move back a little bit with a wide angle lens, and so you can get away with a 50 millimeter or sometimes even down to the 40 millimeter range. I don't recommend that. Use a 70 or 85 or longer is what I recommend. But a crop sensor can help with that. Also, a crop sensor, if you're shooting a lot of images, the images are smaller, and so if you're worried about storage space, that can help out. But in my opinion, the benefits of a full-frame sensor far outweigh a crop sensor. So a full-frame sensor allows you to shoot with longer lenses and get closer. And so you can shoot with a 200 millimeter lens. 70 to 200 is what I recommend. Your images have more dynamic range because a larger sensor has larger photo sites, and so more photons can get in there, and so you get better dynamic range, you get better clarity, you get better color. There's all kinds of things that come with a larger sensor that makes it worth it. So if you're a portrait photographer and you're just starting out, don't be afraid to use your Rebel XTI or your beginner kit Nikon and the kit lens. Don't worry about that. Shoot as much as you can until you absolutely have to get a larger sensor. But if you are going to go to a full frame sensor, the camera that I recommend by far is the Canon 5D Mark III. That's what I shoot everything with. And then if you can afford it, go up to the 1DX or the the DX series for Nikon, the big guns. But those are $6,000 cameras, and so you don't necessarily need that, but there are benefits to it. Back to this little photo right here. Did we answer all the other questions?
We've got a few more if you want them.
Yeah, well, let me talk about one more thing with this shot before we get to that, because I really want to talk about that.
Sure.
But one of the things that's really important, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this on YouTube, so later when you're watching this, make sure that you watch it in full HD. But in this image here, or if you can go to my Facebook page, this image is linked. This specular highlight right here has a purple fringe. I don't know, can you see that, Lex? This little purple? Yeah, what that's called is chromatic aberration. And so what's happening is, it's probably not apparent in the rest of this image, but that needs to be fixed in this image. And so that needs to be white. And that chromatic aberration is what's doing that. So I'm guessing that this lens is probably not a pro lens, and that's the giveaway, is that you get some yellow or fringing there on this little, what is that color? Purple. There, thank you. And so that needs to be fixed with a little bit better quality lens. You wouldn't see that. You can always correct that in Lightroom. There's a lens correction little button there that you can turn on, and that would get rid of that. If not, you can use a little healing brush. All right, let's get back to the questions really fast.
Let's see. BRG Photography would like to know what the aperture on the photo is.
Let's take a look and see if we can find out, because this is on... I don't know, because I don't know how I can see the data on this guy, the metadata. My guess is this is probably a 1.2, 1.8 lens, but I don't know. View XFM, so let's see how I did. And it says not much. So we don't have the data. So I don't know. It's not in there, but my guess is this is probably a 1.8, 1.2 lens. If I had to guess, I'd say this is a 1.8 50 millimeter, but I don't know. We'd have to ask Krista.
Well, I've got another one from Sergio who's got a comment. He says that he thinks the eyes are oversaturated, and he'd like to know how to understand when post-production has gone too far.
Okay. Good. I don't think these are oversaturated eyes, but I can see where you're coming from, because they do have a lot of saturation. The colors are really popping. The other thing is the other giveaway of the saturation is the skin tones are a little bit off. So that needs to be, use a layer mask if you're in Photoshop to do that, or a radial brush in Lightroom to just affect the eyes and not have this color cast on this kid's face, because a little bit more and this baby's going to look jaundiced. There's going to be too much color in the face, and you're going to get those oranges and greens are going to start popping out. So too far is something that comes a lot with experience. And so one of the things that I see a lot with beginning photographers, usually like 1 or 2 years in, is they will just do so much post-processing that it's a giveaway that they're beginners. And the giveaways are the skin tones aren't correct. They're either too yellow or too orange. The pores on the skin disappear. That's another one. Or you just have no detail at all in the image. Or the opposite is true. Things are so sharpened that everything looks like, a 16-year-old girl looks like she's been smoking her entire life, and she's just got leathery skin, and it's just horrible. So I'm sure we're going to see some examples of bad retouching. But the other clear way to tell if your retouching has gone too far is you're not going to be selling any images. People are going to go, oh, that's just too much. And then experience is going to lend a hand in that, because a lot of beginning photographers can't tell the difference between too much processing and enough. And so they'll look at something that's at a magazine and think they've duplicated it, but without maybe some experiencing, a little bit of understanding that stuff. It comes with time, I guess. It's like learning to drink wine or any other thing. At first, you can't really taste the differences, right?
Right.
It takes a little while. And so the same is true of anything. It takes a while. So when we see some bad image processing, I'll point those things out, as I have, like this chromatic aberration needs to be fixed. The skin tones are a little bit off. I would heal up a few things here and there on this image. But we'll point those things out. The other thing is, not to sell my own stuff, but I did an amazing portrait retouching workshop that you can get on snapfactory.com/live. And guess who the model was? It was you.
It was me.
Yeah, you weren't there because we shot everything before, but your picture is in that. All right, any other questions?
We had 2 more questions about that last photo. One about the cropping. Cropping
Yes.
of the chin has been mentioned a few times.
Yeah, and let me see if I can find this picture again, because I think I just closed it, and I shouldn't have.
And then also really quick, does the position of the catch light matter?
It does, and dang it, I closed it, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it again. Did Jeremy Cowart send me a thing? Anyway, sorry. It does. The position of the catch light matters because, well, yes and no. It matters because you want to have a catch light that's large enough that you can see. So a small catch light sometimes doesn't give you as much of a life in your eyes. And I can't find this picture of this little child, but that was a really large catch light. Instead of just the little dot, there was that dot, and then it looks like there was a bunch of ambient light. And so a lot of times if you'll have an ambient light, or in the studio, a lot of photographers will add a bunch of lights that don't do anything except for add more catch lights. And so it makes eyes look sparkly. And so, yeah, that definitely does matter. So larger catch light, sometimes more catch lights, make things look a little bit sparklier, more lifelike. Smaller catch lights that are just to the side makes people look a little more sinister and a little less alive, a little more dead. I guess that's what we would say. Okay, any other questions?
Slightly, not quite related to the baby, but Richard would like to know, when shooting a model headshot with long hair, how do you shoot to fill the frame and not lose the length of the hair?
Man, that's a struggle that I have, especially with some models I shoot with. Your hair is so long.
I know.
I wonder if I have an example of that. Let me see really quickly. So a good example is Lex, actually, because she has really, really long hair. And so I'll show you two things that we did, and I don't know if I have both pictures. Well, here's a shot. This is from the retouching class, actually. And so this shot, this is the before and after retouching shot. You can see that I actually did crop some of Lex's hair, because it goes way down, almost to your elbows. It goes down there. And so on a headshot, remember it's called a headshot, not a hair shot. And so if you're shooting hair for a salon or something, then you're going to shoot that differently than if you're shooting a headshot for a headshot. And that's also different than shooting like an editorial shot or a fashion shot, which is generally has more detail in it than something like this. So when a headshot, what I try to do is just to crop just a little bit below the clavicle down here. Is that the clavicle? Is that what that's called? Just right here on the shoulders, below the collarbone, I guess. So that's what I'm trying to do. If I want to get all of the hair, then I would do something that's a much wider shot. And I don't think I have a much wider shot of you in here. Or the other thing that we did was this. We changed the hair. So we put the hair up. And this was Allison Penn was the makeup artist and the hairstylist for this. And so that was one thing that we were trying to work with, was how do we deal with the hair? And so we put it up. And then we also shot another photo. I don't have it posted here, but I have the behind the scenes photo. And so your hair was like braided in this really, gorgeous, awesome stuff that Allison did. But if this was a shot that I wanted to do to show all of the hair, I would probably crop it more like this and make sure that the wardrobe supported the hairstyle. And then I would get more of a fashion shot where I was getting wardrobe and hair and not a headshot. It's a different shot. Now this is a weird cropping because we were shooting this for Profoto for behind the scenes. And so the Profoto head was more important actually than you, sorry. But that's more what I would do. So I hope that helps. But I want to get back to the other people's pictures, not mine. So any other questions before we?
No, I think we can go on.
Okay, so this is Christopher Cooley's portfolio. And this portfolio has something that stands out to me significantly. And I think, Christopher, this is something I would change if I were you. So Lex, you haven't seen this portfolio, is that right? You haven't seen it?
No.
All right. So when you look at this is the cover image right here. What are you expecting to see? What kind of images would you think you were going to see from an image like this? Would it be grungy people on the street, maybe subway kind of stuff, fashion? Would it be kids? Would it be glamour shots? I mean, what thing?
Oh no, urban life, definitely.
Very urban life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, urban life. This is all flowers. And so that struck me as really odd, that there is the New Yorker, this awesome, New York scene, and the portfolio is all flowers and nature. And so I would definitely, this is false advertising, I think. is that you have, okay, we're going to have urban grunge. And what do you have? You have flowers. And so, and maybe if I dig in a little bit, we're going to see more urban grunge, but those two things just don't add up for me. And so forget about how awesome the photos are. The presentation of the photos I would change, because you're expecting one thing and getting something else. And also, I don't really understand the navigation here. So we've got photos 68. I don't know, is that 68 photos in there? I'm not sure. Stories 1, I guess that's how many are in there. I mean, that's probably a 500 pics kind of thing. So I'm just going to click on favorites really fast and go in here and see what we got. Some very, very cool images.
Absolutely.
One stands out right off the bat is this shot right here. I'm just going to go in yeah, so I think these are other people's photos. Are these other people's photos? I'm not sure. Yeah, so this is Andreas. So maybe this is more like a Tumblr thing. See, already I'm lost because I don't know 500 pics. Are you lost? I don't know if these are their pictures or... But I love this photo. Whoever took it, fantastic. And I can tell, the Leica, man. So all those people that don't understand why a Leica costs $9,000 or $10,000, I was able to borrow one for a year because I can't afford a $10,000 camera. And, I mean, they had to pry it out of my hands, because I didn't want to give it back. Actually, what happened now that I've given it back to them, what happened is Leica allowed me to have this for a while, and I was in New York and I broke it. Oh. I broke their camera. Oops. And so I secretly sent it back to them and had them fix it all up. And I thought, if I ever break it for real, I can't afford to fix it. And so I shipped it back because I was too scared. Yeah, I think this is, favorites are other people's pictures. All right, let's just look in photos. So sorry, your favorites are great. All right, so in these, again, I think you've got some great macro stuff. This, I'm just going to talk about this one specifically, and unfortunately this is the one I picked. This one here has great composition, it's got great color, I like the saturation. It has one significant problem, and that's the focus should be right here on this little guy, and it's off just a little bit. So you can see that the depth of field is so shallow. We have the leading edge of this petal right here that's in focus, but the actual little, was that a moth, do you think? I don't know. Yeah, the moth is out of focus and it should be in focus. And so you might want to take your, this is a 4.2 macro, so you might want to shoot at like 6.3 or something to get a little bit more depth of field because you're missing this. And I'm guessing what happened is this was focused, and when you click the shutter, maybe the wind blew and it just moved by that fraction of an inch and it moved out. So I like your stuff, Christopher. This is really good stuff. I don't have time to go through it all, but my portfolio review is change this New Yorker thing to more accurately represent what you're shooting, which is nature, not urban life. Okay, do we have more questions?
We've got a question about studio portraits.
Okay, let's ask that, and then we're going to talk about, yes.
What does Mark prefer for studio portraits? Prime versus zoom lens? Any other prime lens? From Omar.
Omar. I had a really good friend named Omar bin Isa. So Omar, I prefer, for portrait photography, years ago, prime lenses were what you should have used because to get a zoom lens to act like a prime because of all the refraction and everything in the lens, it was almost impossible. But because of technology now, zoom lenses are nearly the same quality as a prime lens, and so they're almost indistinguishable as far as vignetting and chromatic aberration and all the problems that we used to have with zoom lenses. And so those issues are not a thing of the past totally, but for by and large they are. And so because of those reasons, I use a zoom lens. A 70 to 200 millimeter lens is what I use almost always. And it's a 2.8L Canon, and I use the 2.8 with the Nikon as well. And the reason for that is it has enough length, focal length, that I get nice compression. I'm not right on top of the model, so that gives us some comfort, and so I can direct the model. And then because it's a zoom lens, I can get from 70 to 200 really quickly. I have a lot of compositional options. And so let's say I'm shooting Lex here. I could very quickly zoom into 200, get a nice tight shot of her face, zoom out to maybe 125, something like that, get all of her hair like we talked before, and then zoom out again to 70 and get a mid-length shot, just click, 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 without having to do all the walking back and forth that I would normally have to do. So a 70 to 200 works fantastic. As far as primes, the prime that I'm in love with and I use as much as possible is my 85mm f1.2 Canon lens. And I've got the old version because I can't afford the new version. It's a couple $1,000 for that lens. But if you can rent or somehow, I bought mine, I think that's the only lens I bought new, but at the time I think it was $1,600, which it's more expensive than that now. And I love that lens because it's crystal clear. But for the money, the 70 to 200mm f2.8L is the way to go. All right, before we go on, I have to mention Squarespace. So Squarespace is our sponsor, and they're bringing us all of this stuff. Now, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform, and it makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. And you can get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. You can go to squarespace.com, and you can use our offer code, which is SnapFactory1. And so if you do that, 10% off, and you can sign up for free. You don't need any kind of credit card or anything. You can go in and you can try it for a month, and then the plans start at $8 a month, which is really cool. But let me just tell you why I love Squarespace. The nice thing is you don't have to know anything about building a website. So you can go in here, you can see that there are all these templates. And so all you have to do, there's like 3 parts here. You select your template, you start your free trial, you don't have to have a credit card, and you can also get your free domain. So you can have lexisawesome.com, which is really cool. You should have that. So you just go in and you select any of these templates, and they have them divided by things like if you want to be a photographer, if you want to do a portfolio, if you're running a store, if you want to do a personal site, you can choose these. And you can also customize your site. So if you're a developer or you're somebody that knows CSS and HTML5 and all that kind of stuff, you can absolutely go in and do all that stuff. Or if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum and you don't know any of that stuff, there is this awesome help and support page that you can go to. And there are all these, you can just type in like, how do I add a video, let's say. So I've never, and look at that. Here's all the stuff that just pops up. They've got little videos that show you how to do stuff. They even have these live chat dudes that you can click on, and they're 24/7, and I think there's 70 people that are standing by at all times. And so they call it the Care Bear Lair. I don't know, that's not my word, their word. And so you can ask people real questions, and they'll actually talk back to you, which is really, really terrific. And so, I've talked to a lot of people. In fact, Keith Kessler, who was here a few episodes ago, has an amazing Squarespace site, and I highly recommend it. You can even go in and put in all kinds of things. So Squarespace is the place to go if you need something. The other thing that you can do is you can take workshops, and there's just so much there for you. And so check it out, squarespace.com, and you can get, again, your first month is free. You can get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. Just use our offer code, which is SnapFactory1. And by doing that, not only do you get an awesome site for yourself, but it allows us to keep doing videos for free. So Squarespace is paying the bills. So help us out, help yourself out, and get a Squarespace site. SnapFactory1 offer code. Okay, questions?
Well, we've got a lot of questions and we've got a lot of comments about how great Squarespace is. It's so easy. I love it. Website building made easy. So a lot of comments about Squarespace. And questions. Let's see here. MLD asks, I've noticed that a lot of pictures have that faded look. Should one use more of a faded look on photos of individuals?
Yeah, so I think what the term is probably desaturated. So what you do is you're taking colors out of an image. And that is, if you have a used bookstore like Bookman's or secondhand books, something that has older magazines, I love going to those places. If you can go to a used bookstore or Goodwill or one of those places, what I suggest you do is go find older fashion magazines, older photography magazines, and look through them. And what you'll find is, just like with clothes and anything else, styles change. And so what's sort of in vogue right now is to have desaturated portraits. And so and I love desaturating portraits because I think it looks cool, but also it solves a lot of post-production problems because you don't have to worry about all the reds and the yellows in the skin. And so it fixes those. So yes, I think that desaturated photos are awesome, and I think the 500 pics image that we had up earlier, that Leica shot, that was definitely a desaturated image, and so it's to taste. It's seasoned to taste. I like it. You may not, and it really depends on what your client likes. But to do it right, just desaturate it a little bit. And the other thing that you have to play with there to get that right, to make it look good, is you have to be aware of the contrast and also the dynamic range of your camera. We don't have time to go into what dynamic range is, but getting great desaturated portraits or portraits of any kind, you need a camera that has a high dynamic range so you can see all the graduations in the shadow detail and in the blacks. And so to get that look, if you're using a cropped sensor specifically or a beginner camera, you probably aren't going to have as much, you're not going to have as much detail as if you're using a full frame sensor, a medium format sensor, those cameras that are super expensive. There's a reason for that. The way to get around that is just get an old camera from a used, like a used store, what do they call those things? Pawn shop, one of those guys, and throw some film in it. And film has dynamic range that's broader than digital. So
that's actually a good segue. Someone asks, would you recommend buying refurbished equipment?
Yes. In fact, probably 50% of everything I own, maybe more, I bought used. So I buy tons of stuff used. And my philosophy is if I know the person I'm buying from, or if it's a reputable company, Adorama Used certifies all their stuff. I know B&H certifies all their used stuff. Most camera stores, Sammy's, I think, Roberts in Chicago, they all certify their used stuff. So they go through it and make sure it's all good. And so you essentially get the same gear. It's going to have some scratches and dings and stuff on it, but it's the same. And you can save sometimes like 50 or 60% off the price. So get used stuff. In fact, the only lens I said I bought new was that 85 millimeter lens because nobody else had one, but my 70-200 I bought used, all my other lenses I bought used, everything I bought used. So buy used. Absolutely, yes. Okay, any others before we go to Chuck?
Yes, I'd like to get to Marvin's question. I'm sorry it's taken me so long. He says, Mark, shooting with a 1.8 aperture is very frustrating for me, especially when I'm doing the rule of thirds. What would your tip be to do the rule of thirds shot using a very wide aperture? Okay,
and the reason it's frustrating, and I'm guessing what's happening, is you are focusing and recomposing, and when you do that, you lose your focus. And that 1.2 lens I keep talking about, the same issue, because the depth of field, the plane of focus is sometimes literally about 2 eyelashes thick. And so anything can throw off the focus. So if the model inhales, the focus is off, if like any movement at all. And so what I do when I'm shooting with my 1.2 lens is sometimes I'll actually back up a little bit because that increases the depth of field a little bit and gives a little bit more forgiveness to movement. But I almost always shoot on a tripod when I'm shooting at an aperture value that large. And I'll also instruct the model, and I'll tell the person, hey, you can't move. You have to try to keep it, which is really difficult for a model because they're trying to do the Vogue stuff, and you're like, don't move. It's really hard. So you end up shooting a lot more photos. There's really no way around it because it's all the movement that you need to get a good shot. And so you have to work a lot. The thing that will really help you, though, and it's helped me, is if you have more autofocus points, you don't have to focus and recompose as much. You can actually use a cross-point sensor, which is why I recommend the 5D Mark II, 5D Mark III, if you're shooting with Canon, because it does have more cross-point sensors, and so you can use your autofocus point that's closer to the eyes and the rule of thirds than focus and recompose. And if you really want great stuff, you might want to rent like a 1DX or a higher end camera because all those little things add up. Now I did at one point, and I want to get back to pictures, but at one point I did a photo shoot with a 1.2 lens, and we actually did something that they used to do when they were shooting on glass back in the late 1800s. I built an aperture to stick behind the model's head, and we actually held her head in place so she couldn't move. And so, and it was horrible. Everybody hated it. I hated it, the model hated it, and it worked for focus, but for artistic interpretation. So take more pictures, try to get a camera with more autofocus points, and practice. All right, let's talk about chocolate heaven over here. Handmade chocolates. That sounds good. I don't know where this is. The Shambles in York. Looks really cool. So this image is a black and white shot, and the things that I'm looking for in an image like this is storytelling ability. What story does it tell? And so the details that I think that have been left in are as important as the things you take out. So I like the light. I like the really strong backlight, the silhouette of the guy. I like that it's really hard light because we get this nice silver lining around the person. We get this hard shadow that's coming off here. It sort of reminds me of the cover of the book, The Shadow of the Wind. If you haven't read it, read it. It's one of the best books ever written. In fact, that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, oh yeah, it's Shadow of the Wind. It's awesome. But the thing I like is it has that old school look, so it's really hard to tell sort of the time period, except for we have these wires and this little sign that sort of gives it away. We know that we have chocolate right there. Who doesn't like chocolate? We all like chocolate. But I like those things. I like that the darks are absolutely dark. We have some detail in the shadow there. So technically it's cool. The highlights are blown out. So you might want to crop a little bit closer, then we'd lose our chocolate heaven, but that still might work. This might work as a horizontal shot if we crop that right here by the arrows. The highlights are blown out. That's the only technical issue I have from that. I like the story that it tells. It's a little too grayscale. The midtones need to be moved down. Other than that, I like it. Do you have any thoughts on this image?
You know, I look at it obviously from a different perspective, but I like the people. I like how bundled up they are. You can see the man's breath a little bit in the street, and I feel cold. It makes me chilly. I can feel how cold they are, and I like that.
Yeah, you get a sense of place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. And for travel photography and storytelling, that's really important to be able to try to give people a sense of something that's not necessarily seen. Like, how cold is it? And we know how cold it is because of the bundled up in the breath. What time of day is it? We know that from the light. And what's he doing? We don't know, but I like that.
Yeah.
Why is he passing up the chocolate? We don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know, but I like that shot. I like the converging lines that's leading us into the image. I would love if the camera angle was a little bit more camera right, but I think if that happened, you would have everything blown out. So maybe a little bit more camera left, because we get more of these converging lines to lead us into the image. That would be better. But I like how this leading line comes right out of the corner. That's well done. It looks intentional. So that's cool. I like this image a lot. Okay, let's keep going. We have about 20 minutes left at the most, so we really have to kick and keep going. So this, whoa, go back. This is a portfolio. It looks to me, so I don't want to say anything right off the bat. This is Paris, it looks to me, and somewhere. Do you have thoughts on the colors and the images of this portfolio before I give my input? Like, dislike, or have no opinion?
The lighting seems consistent, at least. Each photo has really bright elements. Yeah,
so it's very bright, very saturated. I like that. I like that we're seeing images from around the world. We've seen the Hoover Dam. We saw some things from Paris. This is from, I don't know, maybe New York. A lot of these images are HDR images, and I am not an HDR fan at all. So it's hard for me to give a great review of a portfolio of HDR images, but I think these are HDR images that have done pretty well, except for like this. The reason I'm not a fan is we have orange horses. Horses aren't orange. That's a phenomenal picture. That's crazy awesome.
It's scrolling really quickly.
Yeah, it's going, I'm like, stop, slow down. This guy, well, yeah, I can't make it stop.
Yeah.
So maybe if I go click on the work, and let's see, we'll do people. Okay, so and here's something that is, we commented on this in the last portfolio review, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, Sean, because I know that we talked about your stuff before. These HDR images, I think, are well done for, I'm not a fan of HDR images, but I think they're well done. They do have, the telltale signs of HDR images, which we have ghosting around, the buildings. We have saturated colors that are, stop scrolling, that are inappropriate. In other words, we have weird colored horses and things like that. But a lot of people love that. And I think you redid that is spectacular. So that's an HDR image that I think works. I'm about to get sick though.
Yeah, I can't look at it.
Yeah,
the scrolling is too much.
No, there's a pause.
Okay.
Pause. That's funny. Pause, and we have.
Pause.
How funny. Yeah. So this I think is spectacular. I think you've got a lot of great images, but just be careful on the HDR stuff that you don't make everything an HDR image. Learn how to use graduated neutral density filters and shooting at the proper time of day, maybe long exposure times, focus exposure bracketing, things like that, so that you don't have to do HDR on everything because it looks like, and again, I don't know, but it looks like you found success with HDR images, and because of that, everything is now an HDR image. Or maybe you just put all your HDR images on the front page of your site. But I think some of these are spectacular, like this. I love because it's obviously artificial, right?
Yes.
You don't think this is how Paris actually looks. It's an artificial image. But when you try to make something look real, for example, this is an HDR image. You're trying to make this look real, but it's obviously not. It looks like Crayola to me. So be careful of that. Okay, and we spent some time on Sean's work in the last review a couple times ago, so that's why we're just going to keep going on. All right, this is a shot, and this is the old school. So this person asked no names, no normal names in this. So this guy, Azure, I'm going to say that's what his name is going for the old school look. And so what's my opinion? First, I like it. I like the photo. I like the lighting on this. Okay, so this is broad lighting, is what it's called. So we have a soft light source. It is lit with one light to the larger portion. Not that you have a big side of a face and a small side of a face, but when you're looking at a camera, if you have the cheek closest to the camera showing, that's called the broad side, and the other side is called the tall side. Google Mark Wallace lighting styles, and I think you'll see closed loop, open loop, all that kind of stuff. So this is a nice broad lighting, which I like. It is the shadow underneath the nose and the chin here to be more of an old school look needs to be a little bit more predominant. So the key light, whatever it looks like it was a small round light, sort of beauty dish or something. It needs to move a little bit more camera right and maybe be even a little bit smaller source of light than what you used to get that old school look. But I like the look that you achieved. It just doesn't match exactly what they would probably have had then because the light sources weren't as large. I love the hairstyling. I think that you've got to get a stylist to fix this. These two straps shouldn't be separated.
Yeah, I noticed that too, just from a modeling perspective.
Yeah.
That should be moved.
Yeah, that should definitely, and especially if you're going for old school look, this would never have passed mustard. So you need to fix that because they wouldn't show that. Also, I think that the background works. Yeah, the contrast is nice. It is a little bit lower contrast and desaturated instead of being exactly black and white, which I like. So I think kudos to this. I think you hit the mark pretty closely. The lighting style is a little tiny bit off, but I do like the cropping. I like the outfit, except for this one little strap issue that you have going on here. And I think the model was chosen correctly because
absolutely.
Not all models can fit all time periods. So if you had like a super super skinny wafy model, it wouldn't have worked. And so not that she's not skinny, she is definitely skinny, but yeah, she works great. And whoever the makeup artist was did a great job because I like the eyes, the lips, they all work. By the way, when you're shooting for black and white, you have to pay close attention to the lip color. Because if you use too much red, it's very difficult to do the conversions because there's a lot of red in the skin. And so when you're adjusting your mix between your red, green, and blue, you can also mess up the skin tones on the lips. And so don't use bright red. That usually causes big problems. Okay, on we go. Are there other questions coming in, or we keep chugging along?
Well, I've got a question about portfolios.
Okay.
Would you suggest 2 different websites if, as a photographer, I shoot 2 different genres of photography?
Absolutely, and that's what we were talking about, the myopic portfolio. So you can get away with, there are a lot of photographers that can get away with multiple genres on their site, but they have to be related. So for example, if you're a wedding photographer, I think it's okay to do wedding, family portraits, and children's photography on the single site because it all deals with the same thing, which are families, right? It's all about families, and that makes sense because when you shoot a family, a few years later they have kids, you shoot their kids, later those kids are going to grow up and they're going to do senior portraits, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's all in that life cycle of family and marriage and babies and those types of things. The things that you can't mix, and in my opinion, the worst offender of all is if you have glamour photography and children. I am absolutely opposed to that. You shouldn't mix those two things. I think it's totally inappropriate. But don't mix things like, I've seen even on our portfolio reviews, stuff like guns and senior portraits. I'm like, what? Don't do that. And so if you're a sports photographer, it should be sports. And so you could do sports photography. You could mix your sports photography with product photography if it's things like gears and spokes and wheels of bicycles or things that are dealing with sports. But don't have sports photography and then fine art photography about rings and diamonds. It just doesn't make sense. So keep it within the same story. So if it's about sports, make it all about sports. If it's about weddings, make it about weddings or weddings and family. So, and if you need to, 2 different websites, absolutely. And I've done that. That's why I have multiple sites. So I don't have all of my workshops on there's a link to it, but I don't have a bunch of workshops on my portfolio because I'm presenting for people to buy my images, not to sign up to take a class. So yeah, keep them separated. Keep your worlds separated. Try to compartmentalize stuff. It usually works for some people. Okay, so this shot here, just is from Justin. This is the Colorado Pro Challenge. And I think this is a great shot. Now, a couple things here that I would mention. I love bicycles, and so I'm drawn to this shot. There are a couple things that could change here, I think, and it's very difficult for me to judge on a single photo, and so I'm going to make a bunch of assumptions that are probably wrong. So first of all, this shot is great because it freezes the action. So it's got a fast shutter speed. We know that because we can see the spokes are absolutely frozen. And so what that does is it freezes the action, and we can see every little thing on the cyclist's face, and we can see stuff. This is a little bit soft, and I don't know. It looks to me like it's probably a compression issue with Facebook, not necessarily your shot. But we can see the muscles. We can see everything going on here. It's really cool. I like the wider angle lens, and so we have sort of this distortion at each side of the image, and that sort of brings us into this pack of cyclists. So I think that's great. So overall, pretty good shot. What could make it better? First of all, I think if you had some kind of fill flash, that would help. There's a lot of dark areas in this, and a flash would help a little bit if it's allowed. Sometimes those aren't allowed on the racing circuit. So I don't know if that's something you could have done even if you wanted to. Secondly, I think that if you, this is a great shot, but to add to it, you should do some panning shots with a slower shutter speed, something around a 30th of a second, 15th of a second, and do some panning. And then what you would get is you would see the speed and the motion of all of these cyclists, and you'd have blurred legs and blurred wheels, and you'd have blurred background. And so instead of everything being stuck in time, you would have that sense of motion. And so panning, I think, would have been a great addition to this. And maybe you did some of that, I don't know. But I think a panning shot would be better than just the still shot that you did here. Although this is a great shot. The other thing I like about this is there is a clear subject, which is this dude right here. So we know he is the subject of the photo and everybody else is just there as dressing. And I think that's done well. And I think you nailed the rule of thirds by placing him where you did in the shot. So overall, I think that's a great shot. Just try some other options as well. And maybe you did, I don't know, but that's what I would suggest. All right, do we have other questions?
Yeah, I'm going to combine a few questions
Okay.
here. A lot of people know that you use Lightroom for editing, and they'd like to know what you think about Lightroom versus Photoshop versus Topaz Labs.
Okay. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know about Topaz Labs, so that's a new thing to me. And I use Lightroom and Photoshop together. They're two different tools that are made to work together as a team. And so I highly suggest using Lightroom to do tonal corrections. So that's color, exposure, saturation, fixing lens corrections, things like that. Do that in Lightroom, and then use Lightroom for cataloging, keywording, geolocations, all that kind of stuff. All the stuff that you need to do to be able to search, find, and distribute your images should be in Lightroom. But for retouching and doing the heavy duty work, you should use Photoshop. So pixel level editing, like changing the shapes of something, or really going in and adding layer masks and layers and styles and textures, that really has to happen in Photoshop. And they're made that they can work together. So you can right click on an image in Lightroom and say edit in Photoshop. It goes over to Photoshop, you edit it there, you save it, whoop, that shows up in Lightroom. And so it does this thing called round tripping. Again, not to sell my own stuff, but I'd love for you to buy it. We did a Lightroom 4 or Lightroom 5 workflow, I think, It might have been Lightroom 4, Lightroom 5, but it's at snapfactory.com/live, and it goes into great detail about that. And I think it's, Matt, do you remember? It's 12 hours, I think, something like that.
I think it came out to be about 10.
Yeah, okay, about 10 hours of content for $30. So check that out. If you're new to Lightroom and Photoshop and you're not sure which one to use for what, check that out. You can rent it for $20 for, I think, 6 months. So it's really inexpensive to get all the training that you need there. Okay, any other questions?
Is it good to use fisheye lens for landscape photography?
No. A fisheye lens is something, I mean, you can, but a fisheye lens is so distorted, it won't make your landscape look pleasing. It'll make it look like a fantasy land from, some kind of weird. So no, don't use a fisheye lens for landscape photography if you want to be selling portraits or publishing those portraits in Outdoor Photographer or Arizona Highways or something. It's too distorted. What you should do is go in and use just a wide angle lens, like a 24 or 16 millimeter lens, because it's wide, but it's not, a fisheye lens is actually, it's got like a bubble and it's bringing in almost 360 degrees of information, and it just really will distort your images to the point where nobody's going to buy that that's what anything actually looks like. It's a totally specialized lens for distorting things and making them look crazy. I wish I had time to show you some fisheye lens examples of some sports photography from some arenas and some things like that. I think Mike Daggett shot that. I don't remember, but you can use a fisheye lens for all kinds of really, really cool things. But if you're going to do scenic photography, no. Okay, any other questions? We're running really low on time.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to look at a couple more pictures. And by the way, we're doing this again next week. Do you remember if it's Tuesday or Monday?
Monday.
Why is Monday Tuesday? Yeah. Go to my Facebook page and we're going to post the time. I'll do that later on today. But yeah, next week we're going to do this again because we know we just don't have enough time to get to everybody's pictures. But we're going to get to as many as we can in the next 3 minutes. Okay, this one right here is a shot from Armin. And so this person doesn't have a studio, so he did this with one flash. And so let's take a look at what he's done. All right, this image to me, I think this model is a beautiful model, and we've got, we've got a white background, which is cool. So I don't know how you did this without a studio, maybe some seamless white, something like that. But there are some things that I think that could be improved with this image, and so I want to go through that with you. The first thing that stood out to me, and I think, Lex, we were looking at this earlier, and I think it's a good starting point, but there are some things that could change. So the first one is the cropping on the head is a little too tight. So either crop in and just get really intentional and crop really close. She's got beautiful eyes, so you could get away with that. Or go ahead and show the top of the head. It looks like she's been lopped off there. So that's something that I would change. The other thing that I would change is that it's overexposed on camera right by a long way. And so we're losing detail in the highlights pretty considerably. And so that's something that either a light meter or you could use some bracketing or something, but that is overexposed too much. So we've got too much going on there. The other thing, that the skin tone is off. One of the things I would suggest to get the skin tones right is either use a gray card to set your white balance, or if you have one available, purchase an X-Rite color checker passport, and that's going to help you manipulate these skin tones to be a little bit more accurate. This has been desaturated a little bit, what we talked about earlier, which is really cool. A couple other things that I think could be improved. We've got this really dominant earring right here. But on this side of her head, the earring falls out of the image, and so that looks a little bit odd. And because this is overexposed, her ear looks like it's been chopped off. So it looks like we need to see more. This overexposure really, really detracts from the beauty of this model. And then also, and I don't know who did the styling, but the styling to me is all wrong. The makeup is a little bit too heavy on the eyes, and the hair, again, because it's overexposed, this looks like really fine hair that's been a little bit singed. And I know, because I've done this a million times, the reason the hair looks stringy like this is because it's overexposed. And so you just have too much light in this image on camera right, and that's throwing everything off and taking what could be a great photo and basically destroying it where it's just not where it could be. And so that's my input on this. You might be able to save some of this information if you go into Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, if you shot RAW, and just bring the exposure down by about a half a stop or a stop, and you might get there. And then open up the shadows, and you'll get detail back in the hair. So shoot it again, and try to get that exposure to be a little bit more accurate. That's my suggestion there. Okay, we're going to do... It's 11 o'clock, so we have time. We're going to do one more photo. We don't have enough time to go through all these other portfolios. I'll save them, though, so we can come back to them later. This is just a shot that I wanted to show because we don't do a lot of scenic photos, and I really like this. This is from Justin, again, Justin Negrassis. Negrassis.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I like it.
Negrassis. This shot I liked for several reasons. And before I give my reasons, like, dislike.
It looks a little artificial to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, and it is artificial. So the reason I like it, and I totally see what you're saying about being artificial. It's the colors are weird. Mm-hmm. It's the colors are a little bit too blue. That's what's going on here. So maybe the white balance isn't set correctly, and that can happen a lot when you have lots of green. And you're shooting in a forest, the white balance can be thrown off there. So it's a little bit too blue in the post-processing or when the white balance was set. But for me, I like that because it reminds me of an old film, photo that's been processed incorrectly. So I like sort of that old-timey bluey feeling to the image. I like the foreground interest of this log here, and I like how you used a neutral density filter to allow this water to flow, and you get sort of that sanded down look. I like that stuff. So to me, this isn't something that I think would necessarily show up in a magazine for hiking through wherever this is, the Bitterroot river or something. But I like it because it reminds me of growing up in Montana. That's why I like it. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Let's hop in the river. Let's go zipping down the stream. The other thing that I like about it is that sense of time. We know that this isn't, I wouldn't hop into this river because it's going to be freezing. Because because the trees have no leaves and this is all dead. So, there's no frost and there's no snow, but definitely I'm not jumping in that water. It's going to be cold. But I like it for that reason, but not necessarily you. So,
right.
Yeah. So Lex gives it a thumbs down. I give it a thumbs. You get it this?
Yeah.
Sideways. Lex gives it a sideways thumb.
thumb.
I give it a sort of this thumb, like that.
Yeah.
So you get this. So yeah, fix the color temperature. Yeah, and maybe shoot one that doesn't have the neutral density filter, and we'll see. All right, sad to say we are out of time, and we always run out of time with like a million things left to go. But I don't know how we could go any faster than that.
So many questions I couldn't get to. I'm so sorry.
Yes. So we're going to be back next week, and we will start again. We're going to do some more stuff. And I want to tell you about something else that we're going to be doing, not this month, but in February. We're going to be doing more photo reviews, and we're going to do something new in February. And the reason we're going to wait until February is because I need to prime the pump and make sure people know what's coming. But I want to do a photo review. And we might do 2 of these. We're going to see how it goes. And the theme of it is, what is wrong with this picture? And so a lot of people I get so many emails of people writing in and saying, I don't know what I did wrong. Here's the photo, here's the shutter speed, the aperture value, here's how I use the flash, but I still have this going on. How do I fix it? And so that's what I want to do. I want people to send in their photos that have gone wrong, but you don't know why. And then what we'll do is we'll do a little CSI Miami, and we'll use the EXIF data, the data about how that image was made, the shutter speed, the camera model, the focal length, all that stuff. And from that, we'll be able to tell you what went wrong in your picture and how to fix it. And so it'll be awesome. So we're going to do that in February. I'm going to write up a bunch of stuff because we can't just post that on a Facebook timeline. We need more information to be able to go in and decrypt that image. And so we're going to be doing that in February, which is only a couple weeks away.
Absolutely.
It's coming up fast. So we'll be doing that. Also, Lex and I are going to be in the Bahamas.
Yes.
And we are doing a workshop. We're doing a bunch of workshops there. Lex is going to be the model. I'm going to be the photographer. We're going to be doing studio lighting, an intro to studio lighting, and a beyond the basics for more advanced studio lighting. I'm going to be doing speed lights, so we can show you how to shoot with speed lights in a studio. And we're doing a photo walk in the night, so we're going to show you how to shoot outside and do a bunch of stuff. and we're also doing a workshop on creativity. And this is all happening with the f-stoppers. And so we're going to wind up and we're going to show this video so you can see it, because we really want you to come and hang out with us, because those spots are going to be gone soon, and we're keeping classes tiny. We're keeping them down to, in some classes, only 6 people, and that's it. And it's not just me, it's people like Peter Hurley and Pi Jersa and a bunch of other people. And you can mix and match. So you can take a workshop from me one day and a workshop from Peter Hurley one day and something from Pi one day and something from Dixie Dixon one day. It's going to be awesome. So we're going to leave you with that. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Make sure you check out my Facebook page, because that's where all the information is going to be posted, so you know exactly what to do. And we're going to leave you with this little video from the Bahamas. Hi everybody, I'm Mark Wallace. I've got something really exciting to tell you about. The F-Stoppers, which I'm sure you all know about, invited me and other photographers to come and teach some workshops this year at the Bahamas. And so I'm going to be doing that. May 28th through June 1st, I'll be teaching 4 different workshops. One is Studio Lighting 101. So if you are new to studio lighting and you want to learn all about portrait photography, I can teach you that. But for those of you who know a little bit about, or a lot about studio lighting, I have my Studio Lighting Beyond the Basics, where we really delve into some more advanced topics. And so I'll have all of my pro photo gear there. We're going to have top-notch models there for you to shoot, and I'll be teaching you all kinds of things. Now, in addition to that, I know a lot of you don't work in the studio, you work on location, so I'll be teaching my Speed Lights workshop, and that is going to be in the studio, and we're going to have a photo walk at night for those students, and so we'll shoot outside at night and in the studio. We're going to be using all kinds of light modifiers as well. And then to top it off, I have a workshop that's all about creativity. It's called Kickstart Your Creativity, and so maybe you are a photographer or a writer or a blogger or somebody that has to create a lot of content and be really sharp. Well, how do you do that? I've got the workshop that's just for you. It's called Kickstart Your Creativity, and I can't wait to be teaching that. So it's May 28th through June 1st in the Bahamas, and you can see all of that at F-Stoppers Workshops. Now, there's something more I want to tell you. It's not just me. I'll be joining a cast of characters that I'm honored to be surrounded with, and there are people that you know and love. We've got Michael Greco, we've got John Keatley, Dixie Dixon, Mike Kelly's going to be there, Peter Hurley will be there, Pi Jersa, and Rob Grimm. They're all going to be there. So these are superstars in the photography world. So if you want to know about studio lighting or light or headshots or shooting on the beach, maybe Dixie Dixon can show you some really awesome stuff. You can take classes that are a day. You can take and mix and match. So you maybe take something from Peter Hurley, take something from me, take something from Dixie Dixon, and you can mix and match and make it the workshop experience that's perfect for you. So don't miss it. Just go to fstoppersworkshops.com and see all of the workshops that are there, and sign up soon, because class spaces are being very limited. We're going to make sure that we don't have huge classes. We're limiting those classes to a small number of students, and so that you can hang out and get all of the quality and education that you deserve. So join us. Check it out. fstoppersworkshops.com.